Enlarge that. Makes their noses a little bit bigger. Very good. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you're at. That would apply. This morning's topic of this morning's Dharma talk is communication. Communication in the three jewels: the Buddha, the Dharma, the Sangha. The structure of the teaching person and what is being taught, and the community of people who gather together and endeavor to study that teaching by the person who is teaching, and also by teachers in the lineage down through history. This was happening in the 6th century, happening in the 3rd century, happening 3 weeks ago, happening now. Communication is very, very important. You've heard my structure that I use, I give to people. If you're having difficulty with anyone, just listen 90% of the time and talk 10. It does wonders. That's with a capital W for a lot of relationship situations, because usually the person in any kind of situation, spiritual path or domestic, just wants to be heard, wants to hear what they're saying. Pretty simple, isn't it? Pretty simple. Just want to hear what you're saying. Communication. The difficulty that happens in the Sangha is the communication between people in the Sangha members, whether they're just started studying in this situation 3 weeks ago, they're Sangha. Sangha just means community, I guess. And the people have been studying for years and years. And the Sangha that you meet in the teachings, that you hear what the questioner, whoever that may be, is asking of the teacher, possibly the Buddha, possibly Dogen Zenji, anybody. Very important. As I've said probably hundreds of times, and I'll say again, and if you don't understand this, I'm always open for questions. This is a very important thing I'm about to say. You're not going to hear it too many places, because most people are into what? Controlling, concluding, finding out, and protecting. You have to study, but you don't have to understand it. Isn't that a great, think about that. If you actually think about that, reflect on it just a little bit, you'll see that you just have to study it, just return, because your idea of understanding precedes your insight into whatever you're understanding, and it can act as a barrier. Excuse me, and it is motivated by fear, and quite often that fear is unfounded. I'm not saying there aren't a whole bunch of founded fears. I told Dunyo as I was driving, and I'm really irritated by a lot of things. And I said to her, I might want to keep my temper to a minimum here, or the communication is going to fall through. So I will endeavor to do that. If I seem to be abrupt or angry, I might be, because my motivation should be obvious. If you look close over the last 50 years, my motivation is to help people, not to control them, offend them, abuse them, get in their way. But I am being accused of that. Not only by one person, but a lot of people come in and they see that and it's too scary and they leave, and they are correct. They're correct. They should leave because they're not ready for this. I'm not an elementary school teacher. I'm not a university professor. You say, well, that's obvious. So a problem in the Sangha is gossip. I've been in several Sanghas over the last half a century. It's quite a pain. As Kobun said one time, Kobun Roshi, my Zen master, said, when someone asked, how would you basically define Sangha? And he said, a garbage pit. And that was a description. It wasn't condemning, but the way we might take this, he doesn't like the Sangha. It's irritating to him. It's a pain in the butt he has to put up with it because he's a Buddhist monk, so he just has to do it. No, he's just saying it's a lot of terrible, smelly confusion that we're all trying to work with in order to help ourselves, fundamentally help others. If you go by the mundane path, I'm not saying there aren't some areas there that we really have to look at, but if you use that as your determination, you just stepped off the spiritual path. Go ahead. I won't chase you. I have enough people, 5, 8, 10, 15, maybe 20, that want this kind of help. I did not get here in the last 10 years. I didn't even get here in this century. Don't believe any of that stuff. It's baloney. If you are a student of mine, even if you haven't asked me, if I've not said yes, I will. Here's what you have to do if you're a student of mine. You have to let me know when you're leaving. Come and say, Sokuzan, I found a better teacher, another teacher, or I don't want to study this with you anymore. Tell me to my face. Please do not send me a text or an email, especially a group email, including other people. Have some guts. I'm not Dalai Lama. I'm not a famous person that is protected by this incredible radiance or lineage. I'm just an old man living in Michigan from one point of view. But I might know something you may be interested in. So I said, I don't need your devotion or your love. I don't need anything. As I've said before, and I don't mean this threateningly, I don't need to live. It's true. You see what this is? You're beyond life and death. It's not a credential. It's just the truth. Interested? I can help you. Not interested? Please go somewhere else. Okay, enough scolding. So we need to be sincere with each other. We need to fundamentally communicate and help each other. Talk to me. You might not have time. You might have to get an interview 3 weeks from today. But as I say to people, if people get really close to me and look nervous, I say, I'm not going to let you down. You might think I let you down, but I can't let you down. There isn't anybody but you. I'm not saying there isn't a strong manifestation of a personality and even an ego here, but it is unreal, and I see it, and it's liberated. I'm so free that I can do what what Mr. Trump threatened to do. I'm not going to do that, but I'm saying that's the difference, or that's the same thing as someone who is completely down in hell trying to control you, and someone who is in the Dharmakaya and is trying to help you. Am I claiming some kind of positionality? No. If I have anything to say in this Nirmanakaya, in this human realm, you're going to allow me to say it, or you won't. If there's no Sangha, if there's a teacher and a teaching, but there's no Sangha, then the whole thing collapses. Have to protect the Sangha. This does not mean protecting people in the Sangha who are afraid of the teacher. That's part of the teaching. Some people are so protected they don't even know they're terrified of the teacher because they're constantly projecting onto the situation. They believe their thoughts. You don't have to do that. You don't have to shut them down. You don't have to explain them. You don't have to even understand what this is. What do you have to do? If you're a student of mine, if you're a student of the Buddha's Dharma, you have to practice. Get to the wall, sharpen that prajna, sharpen that blade of seeing deeply into anything before you're stopped by your opinions, your ideas, your judgments, your hope, and your fear. Because that's what's going to happen right up until the time of you passing out of this realm into the next realm, if there is one. This is a good opportunity for you. It's not a sales pitch. The Buddha, the teaching person, right here in 2021. The Dharma, the truth, everything is dependent. There is nothing comes from its own side. Everything is in a state of stress. You can take that stress and start blaming people around you for it. And if you do, you might have a robe on. You might prostrate to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha every day. not where you think you are. This has to be done with awareness, not with conclusions and exclusions and judgments and evaluations. That's why I say you have to practice, but you don't have to learn. You have to study. You don't have to learn. You do not have to attain enlightenment, but you have to have that intent, because that's how you work with samsara. If you don't buy into the relative truth, you also don't ignore it, and you don't take the relative truth and come to a conclusion about it to try to get control of your own mind stream. Take some questions if you have.
Chizanbai, how do we work with communication when we can't be certain of anything that we think? Bound.
Just receive. Receive your thoughts. Receive what other people are saying. Just receive. And you can't, unless you've practiced receiving, which is what Shikantaza is, sit down, hold still, and receive the constant chatter of the mind stream that thinks it is someone, needs protecting, needs advancing, needs a credential, is being threatened by someone. It's an ongoing melodrama. Well,
is there an outcome if we're truly communicating?
There can be outcomes.
I'm thinking about like with a relative, maybe we're trying to get to a goal or come to a consensus or an understanding, but if the communication's not particularly about manipulating anything, is there
harmony as far as the Buddha Dharma, as far as the Sangha, harmony in the Sangha. This does not mean there isn't confusion. Sometimes if there's confusion between two people in the Sangha, I will say, get together, meet, sit down, face each other, look at each other in the eyes for a minute or 2 minutes or no longer. Just look before, so your original connection, which is not a thought pattern, it's not a belief, it's not anything, so that begins to come together. You will not know if it's come together or not. That's the nature of wisdom. It doesn't know stuff. Ego mind knows stuff. It comes to conclusions. The world is doing this constantly. You notice this, right and wrong, up and down, they shouldn't. Constant. Pain in the ass. More?
What is harmony? How does that manifest?
So there's communication, lots of it, lots of, I said this, I'm saying this is how this looks to me, how does it look to you? That doesn't look that way to me. I think what you're missing there is this part here. It could be about what color to paint the inside of the zendo. Excuse me, for all the throat clearing. And it's some kind, there's a communication, and then there's a cooperation, since now we're communicating. Well, I'll try to do more of this. I'll try to be more on time for the Han and Bell, putting it in those kind of terms. I'll try not to miss my agreement. And then there's collaboration. Then there's more ability to work together on a project where things get more disconnected in terms of the communication part. But there's so much communication, and the cooperation, the attitude of cooperation and the collaboration, all the moving parts start to come together as a community. Go ahead.
When you come together to talk about some sort of conflict or negativity, it might be a little easier to practice being civil about it, but is there a way to not emphasize the resolution?
You pretty much said it. Stop resolving everything. That's ego language. We need to resolve this. No, you don't. You need to see deeply what it is. If you're listening to me, if this doesn't make sense to you on some level, then why even show up here? You heard me talking about this quite a bit lately, and it probably may perplex some of you, but there are internal problems in this Sangha where I'm being accused of things that are not true based on people's projections about this situation. And it is breaking down people that were students of mine that were coming to me directly instead of being encouraged to come this way. They haven't been. So people are going away because of their fear of what they think might be going on. that doesn't feel particularly good. Not that I need to keep everybody in a herd. I don't need that but when I see someone who I've had a really strong emotional connection with, and then that person starts to get triggered by these talks on devotion or something like that, and then they, instead of coming to me, instead of being encouraged to come to me, someone gets in the middle of that and does not allow that to flow or support that or communicate, cooperate, or collaborate so we can all help each other. I'm really upset about this because this tiny little thing here can explode into this whole Sangha falling apart. I know I watched them fall apart. I've been in them. I've been in them before they fell apart. I've been in them after they fell apart, fallen apart. So communication is so important. It's important to listen to what people are saying and not take that to the bank and cash it in based on your preconceptions or on your desire to avoid your own fear by pushing your own fear of reality, that nothing is separate, down and taking a relative situation out there and making it into a real thing. Go out there and support somebody in a way that buys into their misunderstanding of what is happening. More?
Geez, I'm bowing. How can we support anything if we are functioning out of our fear?
It's a difficult one. You have to realize that you are functioning out of fear. Hopefully this will happen through sitting, looking at the wall, gazing at the wall, that your insight into the nature of consciousness, into the nature of the apparent otherness of other people will begin to come clear, and you'll begin to see you're not separate from anyone. You're not separate from the teacher. You're not another person back here evaluating the teacher. This is difficult. It is extremely difficult. I came so close to just ending this lifetime because it's such a difficult lifetime. Karma. It's not a story. It's not something somebody believes in India. Question?
So when we finally see something that we hadn't seen before.
A little louder, please.
Sorry.
Take it off for a minute.
When we finally see something that we hadn't seen before because we're sitting, and you say not to do anything about it.
I do.
But we recognize that we're feeling the grief and the pain of what we're finally seeing.
Just continue to receive it. This path is called the Bodhisattva path. And it's about putting others before yourself. But
regarding that, just receiving it, does that pain and grief that we feel, does that pass, or is that still
it may or it may not. But you can't make it a relative situation like I'm doing this so I'll feel better. You might as well go and practice with the John Cabot Zen. And I don't mind. Maybe that's the kind of practice you need. Something where you can calm down, be cool, finally gotten over your whatever it is. But if you want to transcend this world, if you want to know how to go up this mountain, you need to talk to somebody who is that mountain.
Geez, I'm bowing. Is the communication any different within each of the jewels? Bowing.
Complicated question. Yes, it is different.
What is communication with the Dharma?
Respond to questions about the Dharma. Don't particularly teach the Dharma to someone who is not asking you a question or is not ready to hear it. Don't preach the Dharma from the point of view of converting anyone. Speak the truth out of the Dharma as you understand it. If you understand everything is dependent, there isn't, nothing comes from its own side as an independent being or thing. If you see that, then you can talk about that. But if you don't see it, then it should be talked about as a concept in Buddhism, not something you see. If you don't see it, if you see it, you won't have any doubts about it. It's not conjecture. It's not thought patterns. You actually, the fifth skandha, the fourth skandha of thinking, it might be there, but it doesn't have a lot of say-so about it because you're seeing it. Or seeing, smelling, tasting, touching, or even thinking it. Go ahead.
Is communication with the teacher different from communication with the Sangha?
Well, similar. It's just that if you come in front of the teacher, I don't need to know the size of your underwear, but you've got to be honest with me. You've got to be genuine. You have to. It's not a confessional. I'm not going to forgive anybody. There aren't any sins. There's just intense confusion and suffering in the world. Life is suffering, as the Buddha said. It's incredibly difficult. There are people who are suffering, and we all know someone who's really, really suffering, but it's covered up with what? Their hobby. It's covered up with fighting with their spouse, or it's covered up with anything but being responsible. It's covered up by saving the planet. Not that we shouldn't save the planet. I'm saying that. I'm just saying you can cover up your suffering by getting being all about world peace. It's not that you shouldn't be about world peace. That's not it. I'm just saying anything can be used as a cover-up for what you need to see deep in your mind stream that says, I'm somebody and I'm going somewhere, or I'm somebody and I've been harmed. I'm somebody. You can do this for the next, however old you are, for the next 20 years and be just fine. But death comes without warning. No one that is here, this consciousness that we think is somebody, is coming to an end. Some sooner than others. And I would say, as has been said way before me, find out who you are. Train your mind so when that so-called event of death comes, you know you're completely fearless about that. Go ahead.
Sokuzan, how can we be honest with the teacher when we are deceiving ourselves?
Good one. Work on it. Bring it to the teacher. The teacher already sees your lies. Otherwise, they can't function as a teacher. The teacher already sees that you're lying to yourself. And they might see that you're lying to yourself in the minute they meet you, even though you're all full of happiness and smiles and praise for the teacher, praise for the Sangha, praise. And of course, maybe not of course, but you see it. You don't have to listen to what the person's saying. You can see it. You can smell it. You're here. If you're in the room and you're here 100%, and when I say 100%, there's no one here. Consciousness here. Consciousness always finds its own form. And that form may be what? Formless. And if it's formless, you just met a teacher. If it's some kind of human being you think is an old man sitting on a chair with a purple gown on, then that's your projection. We project onto things until we see what it is. And if you're projecting on the teacher, I would say refuge in the Dharma, refuge in the Sangha, refuge in the teacher. If there isn't devotion, it's not going to happen. If there isn't complete, thorough trust in the teacher. If you have doubts about it, I'm not saying run away, but wait and just watch the doubts. See what is substantiating, reifying, and feeding the doubts. But quite often, it's that area of the mind stream that is collecting evidence to protect himself, herself from the teacher, or from the teachings, or from realizing their true nature, which is not a self. Can't do it without devotion. I'm not saying you have to believe everything I say. I even say the opposite. But you might want to bring some energy this way, as I've said before. I don't need your devotion, but you may need your devotion to the teachings. It doesn't have to be me. But if you're on the path, especially if you're wearing robes, if this teacher doesn't work, find a teacher. Go ahead.
If we're deceiving ourselves, how do we bring that self-deception to the teacher?
As far as I'm concerned, to use you as an example, since you're flapping your jaw, I think you're doing it. It takes time. That's why it's used relatively. It's like climbing a mountain. Where am I at on the mountain? The more you don't know where you're at on the mountain, the closer you are to the top. Less scenery. It's just using that metaphor. You're doing it. I don't have any doubts about your devotion or in your case, different with others. Yes.
Is there a difference between ignorance, vidya, and self-deception?
That is to ignore what is being ignored is the complete open vastness. You're ignoring your wisdom mind. Shut. You don't need that much space. It's like agoraphobia. Too much space with no reference points. Ego wants some kind of opinion, idea, and it will use anything around it, the person, to collect evidence against that, so it doesn't have to ever go there. I mean, by saying you're on the path and you're doing fine, or I'm not saying that you haven't had some difficult times, even recently. And we communicate about it, we talk about it. I don't have thousands of students. I don't even have 100 students. I don't want 100 students. But the students I have should be students. Give me the benefit of the doubt. More?
Mark Bowing, this is from Kelly.
Yes.
How can those of us who are not aware of the fear or concerns Sangha members are having support you and the Sangha?
I think you're already doing it, Kelly. Just attend, show up, train your mind, do a lot of sitting meditation. And some of it is, it's the internal junk that goes on when people believe their thought patterns and start using their ideas about things and without really looking closely. So I'm not saying you're doing that. We just met, so I don't really know you very well. So I would say just continue to come. And the other thing I would say, if you have any kind of difficulty or fear, talk to me about it. Don't just send me an email, I can't do this anymore. What I'm saying, not that you would do that or that anyone here would do that, but it just happened. And it's just, it's not disappointing because I need that student. It's disappointing because I felt that particular student was really doing well. But the fear, I can't present a safe kind of, so the whole, what is it? Whole nervous system that starts to react. People believe that. I don't say believe your body, but believe how you feel, in the sense that you don't avoid it, you don't push it down, and you don't abandon how you feel for what's causing it. Bigness, and that's what will happen if somebody starts to have fear coming out of a situation. And it's difficult to work with this because it has to be somebody that you can have some confidence in, that you can trust. But you're going to find gossip or something about everybody. There are people that think I'm a terrible person. There are people over the last 15, 20 years that think I've maybe abused someone. And I would say, let's go to court. I mean, I don't want to go to court, obviously, but I'm saying, come and talk to me about it. Let's talk about this. I'm not going to try to talk you out of it particularly. So I would just say, just continue to just attend, come. If you have issues, talk to me about it. Don't send me an email, please. I mean, most teachers, you can't even send an email to. If you want to talk to, I'm trying to think of some famous teaching people. There's a bunch of them. Yeah, try to send an email to Dalai Lama. Try to get a conversation with him. Try to get a conversation with, what's another one? Adyashanti. Seems to be a very clear person, what little I've heard of him in the past. But you have to pay a fee. Not that you don't have to help us too, somewhat, but there's no fee. And he's actually not Buddhist. Just thinks he is.
A question from Joseph in Kalamazoo. What is the relationship between what we do and what we proclaim that we do?
Damn, Joseph. Maybe I should ask you that question. So they're never the same. One is something you're actually doing, and then the other thing is the statement about it, which is the very nature of duality, is thinking there are different things. And we use the mind to do that. We go from something we're doing, and then we talk about what we're actually doing here. Like like when we'd say to our child, the conventional thing we've probably all heard, when you get a spanking. I don't know if you guys ever got spanking, but I'm only trying to help you. So there's what they do: beat you, cause physical pain to you, and then say, "I'm only trying to help you." Quite a big gap between those two. So to fundamentally help someone, is not to meddle with them. I don't care if they're 4 years old. Mind your own business. This is a human being, not somebody that you have to mold or train or something like all the baloney that's in the West about, and the East, about the parents somehow responsible. Of course they're responsible. That's the ability to respond, and they should be responding out of what they see, not out of what they think they're seeing. Yes.
A question from Navid in Iran.
Navid, what are you doing way over there?
Is analyzing something in mind the same as thinking? For example, analyzing technical things or analyzing something about the body rather than thinking about personal matters.
I think there's a lot of similarity in that. As far as any talk about the way consciousness works in that area, I think might take more actual empirical science to see the way it divides up. But the way it happens in mind is everything is thinking. Everything is producing thoughts, you don't have to stop thinking. You just have to see that it's dependently arisen. The thoughts you have are not yours, but they're looking for an owner, and that's how they get believed. Because if you think you're thinking, you think you're producing the thoughts, then you use that to protect yourself from things that are threatening, and that may be what's actually threatening, and what you do about it, along the lines of what Joseph was saying. Something is threatening. What it is? Oblivion. That this whole thing that you are can come to an end. Impermanence. As the Buddha said 2,500 years ago, impermanence. Suffering. And no self. No one's there. Those are the three marks of existence. If you understand those, if you really understand those deeply, you're liberated. What's liberated? There isn't anything liberated. That's why it's so damn hard. Because we concoct it just like a pear grows on a pear tree. A pear doesn't grow on an apple tree. Different people have different dynamics. So that has to be seen. And how do you do that? The model we have is the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. I'm not saying there isn't someone in the Iroquois nation that doesn't have another way of working with consciousness that may be just as valid, but not as accessible. Just as valid. If the truth is the truth, how that's approached can be different depending on the beings that come into this particular milieu called the human realm, out of whatever kind of structure we call society, or tradition, or structure of ancestors and so on. Like we have ancestors. We speak their names and what we think are their names, going back to the time of the Buddha, in this sendo every morning.
How does one communicate with the teacher?
Stop lying. Don't lie to the teacher. And a lie to the teacher can be just not telling them what's going on. Just sit in front of the teacher and have an interview and say, I don't have anything. When you do have something, you have a whole bunch of somethings and you're not saying them. It's not a confessional. It's a communication based on a heart connection. The teacher, if you come in front of a true teacher, the true teacher always have a heart connection with you. Why? Because there's only your heart. They don't have a conventional heart, of course, but there isn't anything but heart to the teacher. More.
The teacher is always right in what they say. How does
Wait. I didn't say that. If the teacher's always right in what they say, where'd you get that one from? Where'd you get that from?
We're confused. And every time we talk, our confusion is being pointed out.
Sometimes it's just being observed. It isn't always. It's only being pointed out when the teacher has been watching your confusion year after year after year, and you just keep covering it up. And finally, the teacher may have to come along and slap you upside the head with a sandal, as happened to Narupa. back in the 12th century. It's a symbol for how to, sometimes with some people, they're so covered up, they'll use anything to get out of seeing their true nature. It's very difficult to do. You cannot think your way into reality or into realization. Go ahead.
If the student sees something differently as it's showing up than the teacher.
I'm listening.
How does one communicate?
Talk to the teacher about it. Tell the teacher, this looks like this is happening. This looks like this is happening. What from your, and then say, wait, and then say teacher. No, it has to be teacher or, whatever it may be. Sokuzan, or whomever your teacher is. Put that communication, make that communication so you're on receive. You deliberately go into the hojo, sit down. In your case, since you're a monk, you do 3 prostrations in front of the teacher, and the teacher receives those, and that means the Buddha, the Dharma, the Sangha. That means you're there and you are genuine. You don't avoid telling things that are coming up that are bugging you or bothering you about what the teacher is doing. In your case, particularly, you say, "What is this? What is happening here?" And then if you're ready for it, you will get it. More? That's a very good question.
And if you bring that to the teacher in whatever way it shows up.
Louder, please.
If you bring that to the teacher and the teacher replies, and you still see it some way.
What did the teacher reply? Would they say, no, it's not that way? What you're getting at, I feel, is that the teacher is disrespecting people or manipulating people. Is that what you're saying? Let me have it. Don't hesitate. I'm not. Is that what you're saying? Yes or no? Yes or no?
Trusting yourself.
Trusting yourself does not mean believing your thoughts. It means trusting yourself so much that you don't need thoughts. Keep coming. You're at the edge of the cliff. Watch your step. Watch your step. You are not seeing what's here. You're seeing what you think is here, and you've been doing it for the 10 years that I've known you. You want more? Keep coming. More. Keep coming. Say it. Go ahead.
When I'm saying something, it feels like I'm being interrupted. What I'm trying to communicate is being replaced with how I'm confused.
Oh, I'm so sorry. Are you having a hard time with it being taught? Oh, that's too bad. I've been watching you for 10 years. Is this sarcasm? Yeah. I'll do anything to save you from your mind. That's what I'm here to do, and I intend to do it as long as you give me permission. You're wearing a robe, you're giving me permission. You can't tell me how you want to be taught, my friend. If you do, go do something else. Go find a therapist, a psychiatrist, or somebody else, or go be a teacher yourself and teach your understanding of the Dharma to people. Keep coming. You can't tell me or tell any teacher how to teach you. I don't want that. I don't want that. I don't want it to be. Yeah, go ahead.
When you live in a relative situation.
Go ahead. Pardon my disappointment. To see you get back on that trolley of thinking, judging, evaluating, thinking, judging, trying to avoid your own emptiness. Coming. You think you're talking to a solid being. Keep coming. You stop now. Bring it to me. You're having an interview with me right in front of everybody. An open interview might be best for you, because when you're by yourself with me, things don't work out so well, because then you think I'm saying things that you said that you say you didn't say. Have you noticed that?
I see that happens, that you bring up something that I said and then it changes. It's different than I remember it.
Who's your teacher? Am I still your teacher after all this? Are you sure? Positive?
The last interview
Yes.
that I wouldn't say the other night when I was being
Abused?
asked,
Go ahead.
if other people saw it, they might see it as that way.
Yes? Okay. So where would you like to go from here?
What I said to you, that was difficult to say to you.
What was?
This is an interview. I have a minute to talk about this. I said, you will always be my teacher.
Go ahead.
You taught us no separation. You taught us to see. You taught us no blame, to see how we blame each other.
Good.
You said, notice when you say you think I. And you have to find yourself in the midst of that to see that.
What's your point? I'm listening. What's your point?
It seems that you tell us these teachings, and from my confused perspective, how I see it come out in you in relative situations is the very thing that you're doing. And I said, it's quite a koan. So you said, am I your teacher? I said, you will always be my teacher. Your teachings are my teacher. And this right now is a teaching. But when I see something differently, and you yell at me all the time.
All the time? I yell at you all the time?
You yell at me a lot.
Did I yell at you the first 8 years?
Not as much as now.
Yes, because I want you to find out who you are and stop throwing up these damn screens where you're blaming other people for how you feel by thinking that they're causing what you're feeling. You either want this teaching or you don't. And if you don't, then don't waste my time. But if you want it, I'm all about this. There isn't anybody but you. I give my life up for you right now, and you know it. Or maybe you think that's some kind of propaganda to make me look like a saint or something.
We had,
Yes.
there were things, for example, you said to Unyo, this is a situation I'm bringing up where it's very confusing. So we were sitting in the living room with Unyo discussing something that looks very difficult on a relative sense.
Yes. Can everybody hear? No, they can't hear. So everybody's all they're doing is hearing my rattling around here and missing how much sense you're making. Go ahead. Let me have it. Explain what happened.
Talking about trusting myself and communicating with the teacher.
Yes.
So a situational example, we were talking about something that appears very difficult.
Go on. You don't feel like you're being defensive right now at all? At all?
I feel like my heart's racing, but I don't feel like I'm like running away.
I didn't say you're running away. You're not going to run away if you're behind castle walls. Why would you run away? That's what I pointed to you. If you're talking about the same day where you threatened me, is that the day you're talking about? When you threatened me? Remember that? Do you remember that? When I said, you're defended, you need to come out from behind that defense? Remember that? And then you did. You came out behind the fence, locked and loaded.
You were yelling at me, and you said, come after me, come after me, come after me.
I don't mean hit me. I mean,
You've been saying all kinds of things. And it
you're going to
seemed
blame me for this, aren't you?
provocative. No, I'm not going to blame you.
Oh, you're
for it.
not, huh? You're not blaming me? Okay, well, go ahead then. Go ahead. Say what you're going to say.
My dad told you that this path has helped me a lot. I have issues with aggression, anger.
Yeah.
what
Yeah, you
have
probably stopped fighting with him, but now you're fighting with me. And you're actually gathering evidence of what other people are saying. You said a few days ago, whenever it was, I said, what's your evidence? What am I doing? How am I hurting or abusing people? He says, well, people are saying. And I don't know how many times we all said, what do you mean, what people, which people? People are saying, well, I can't say it's confidential. Remember that?
It started with this, the tone of your talks has changed. People
Of course it has, and it's changed right now. This is anybody tone deaf? I'm functioning as a Dharma teacher, and I don't have any choice about how I do this. I have to meet the aggression and the anger where it's at. You think this is me being aggressive and angry with you. This is your anger you're seeing.
Well, sometimes.
What do you think the in the time span between what I just said and then when you said, well, sometimes, did you notice what happened in that time? You abandoned what I said and went right back into your thought patterns about it. And then you came out and said, well, sometimes I watched it. You didn't. Go ahead. Speak. Well, sometimes I
have no idea.
Well, the interruption was to point out the way you abandon what was just said, what you're calling your teacher, and go into what you think about that situation. Everyone is doing that, by the way, but some people aren't having as difficult a time with it as Tiger Mountain or this person, because I'm not separate from you. I can't be. You have anger, I have anger. You have happiness, I have happiness. You need to see it. You need to see it. Otherwise, you can't save anybody, let alone yourself. You have to meet people where they're at. And sometimes that's pretty smelly and pretty sticky to be in the hell realm with someone who's in hell. And you can't be an angel in hell because they'll burn your ass. You have to be a devil also. You don't see that? And I'm not saying you can't help people relatively. Teach them meditation. But you can't fundamentally help them because you think you're better than they are. And I'm not saying you have an opinion that you're better, but you think that your thoughts are correct. And what I'm saying to you is somehow I'm misunderstanding. You're saying that your teacher is misunderstanding you. Isn't that what you're saying? It's kind of an open question.
When you say to me, you think and it feels different in here, and I wouldn't have characterized it that way, then how at that point do we communicate? Because it feels like I've been interrupted and you're telling me how I'm thinking or feeling.
What's your question?
How does the communication continue when there's been obviously a misunderstanding or a miscommunication?
What's the misunderstanding? What is it? Pointed it out. What is it? What's the misunderstanding?
I mean, situationally?
Yeah.
Or fundamentally?
Let's have a little bit of both if you think you understand both of those. If you think you understand situationally and fundamentally, I'd love to hear your, deliver it.
Situationally or the overall situation? Situationally is the dynamic of
You're going to defend yourself forever.
No, I'm not. I'm just trying
to
see how to communicate.
Okay, go ahead. Go ahead, communicate. Situationally, tell me what it is. Situationally or fundamentally. I'm happy I like those terms. I use them all the time. You can use them. You're using them on me.
So, okay, so a little example of something.
Yes.
You were sitting in your living room and you were saying something that was kind of hot towards Unyo.
Mm-hmm.
And you said, you said, "What is that? What is that?" And she gave a reply that had a lot of verbal, not aggressive, but she was describing her teacher.
You remember this?
I remember the incident. I don't remember what you said.
But Kobun's remembering what you said, so go ahead.
I don't remember the details, but it was an expressive description.
Of what? What is it about?
It didn't seem like anything big to me. You were talking to her. You said, "What do you see?"
Mm-hmm.
And I said, "A man leaning back, looking up and laughing." Because I didn't know how to explain that. I could have said, "I don't know," but it was just the description. So next time you brought that up to me, you said, "You see an old man and I'm disrespecting the teacher." And that's not at all what it was. And then several times later, you described it as, you said you see a fat old man instead of your teacher.
I thought that was pretty creative of me, didn't you?
Yeah, but
And what did you do with it? You picked it apart and found out where I wasn't exactly right.
There's a big difference between I'm just trying to give a description and then
All I was doing is
disrespecting.
pointing out that you did not say, "I see my teacher." Does that feel like I'm scolding you? Or that I somehow need to have credit for being a teacher?
It's just an example of, I don't know how to communicate with you.
I've noticed.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Anybody on Zoom that's been listening to this that wants to ask a question? We have some questions here, but I want to go to the Zoom panel first.
Kevin Bowing.
Yes, Kevin.
Sometimes I lead a little meditation for Open Heart Project. And as you do on every weekday night, and sometimes I get questions from people about how to relate to you. And I find myself getting defensive. What's going on there? And
I would say if they're trying to get you to promote me, don't do it. Just say, if he's giving you a hard time, maybe just listen to you. I mean, you don't give people a hard time that I know of. So I'm not sure what you're asking me fundamentally, but I don't want anybody justifying what I'm doing or defending anything.
I guess my question in terms of communication is, how do I honor a request for clarity without getting into gossip where you're concerned as my teacher?
Boy, there's plenty of room for gossip. It's all over the place. So I would say, since you said it, I'm your teacher. That's how I know. People tell me. If someone's wearing a robe, then I don't have to be reminded. But sometimes, because I wait for you to say this, for all I know, you're not thinking of me that way anymore. So, but if you're still thinking of me that way, then I'm telling you, don't worry about it. Just meet them where they're at. Be friendly with them. Don't justify. Say, well, Sokuzan says this. Sometimes he says this or this or this. What? That's just confusing to me. And say, well, if the confusion isn't so bad, but if it's really difficult for you, don't listen. Do something else. Listen to someone who's eaten more. They're not ready for this. Not that I'm such an advanced, wonderful Mahasiddha. I'm not saying that. I'm saying what is different, maybe different to people's experiences. I'm going to meet you in the garbage pit you live in, or in the castle in the clouds. I'll meet you in the God realm. Wherever you're at, I'm there. And when I say that, it's not some magical thing I'm doing. I can't help it. There isn't anyone but you. If you're sitting in the hojo with me, you're looking here. I'm extremely sensitive to what people think about me. But I don't believe it. It's just narcissism that rises in my mind, arises in your minds. And my intention is to fulfill a vow. And that's the vow to be with all things, to save all beings. If I have permission. But if I don't have permission, then I might just be working with 3 or 4 people here. I don't know. But don't justify, validate, explain. Explaining is not so good. You could just say, depending on what they ask you about or if they're critical, then just say, yeah, I can see how you'd think that. But if it's someone is saying that says, I'm a student of Sokuzan's, and they ask you questions, you say, need to take that to Sokuzan. Because I've had students recently have difficulty and not bring it to me and actually talk to the Sangha about it. That's what's caused all this chaos. Part of it. And just the nature of being a human being is chaotic. And then the Sangha is chaotic. It's difficult. So we have a spiritual community to bring together and try to understand, what did the Buddha say? He said, life is suffering. Okay, we got that. And he also said that everything's dependently risen, that there's no solid being anywhere. That's a difficult one because there always feels like somebody is here. It's unreal. I am endeavoring to help you with that if you're interested. But I can't promise anything. And for you, your karma that the thousands of years you've been walking around the mountain until you start to walk up the mountain, which would be my way of talking about it. It's time. If you want to do this, I'm all about this. I don't know how much time I have left, probably not much. But as long as I'm here, I intend to do this. And I'm not going to do it as a social gathering. I'm not going to do it as following in the lines of society. Society's lines are ultimately correct and incorrect. All the guidelines in society, you'll notice that people break them. That's how you know there's a guideline. Somebody just broke through it. Social structures, mores. Not wrong, relatively correct, but ultimately unreal. So I would say communication, communication, communication. And then you might get some cooperation, collaboration, but let's talk about it. I'm always on receive, unless I'm up here running my mouth. I'll receive what you're saying. I might not agree, or I might not disagree. I might not give you any feedback. I might just say, I don't know. It looks like you're gonna have to work with that. A further question about that, Kevin, or a specific something that I'm missing?
No, that's helpful. But I guess the additional piece is that I get angry and so I get defensive and
angry at me, angry at someone asking a question, or angry at yourself?
I get angry at the people asking the questions and feel defensive of on your behalf. Not that I feel you need that, but I just do.
No. So it doesn't need defending, and not that might not trigger something. Your connection with me is very strong and has been for many years. So people aren't going to see that. They aren't going to see the connection. They aren't going to have been through the stuff, the discussions that we've had about you and all your situations, or the person right next to you on the screen, Bolong. It's difficult to have a personal relationship with somebody over 10 years and not have something start speeding up, slowing down, or throwing out sparks or whatever, just like with Sokuzan. Sokuzan and I, our first 2 years were pretty harmonious in lots of ways, but we get further and further into the relationship. And my way of working with her is not agreeable to her. She didn't like it. My way of working with people, not just her, but other people in the Sangha. Someone who just came in and got kind of terrified by the whole devotional talks. Nobody's asking anybody to fall to my feet and fall to the floor and kiss my feet. That's not being required. Please don't take that to any bank. It's not being required. I'm not asking for anything. You may need the devotion. I don't need it, but you may need that so that you can cut through using your love or your compassion or your whatever you want to call it to get to what it is I'm pointing at. Because what I'm pointing at through the thinking mind, the ego mind, the structural mind is terrifying. It's terrifying. I know, I've looked at it. I'm still looking at it on your behalf, if I may say so. So as far as the people that come to you and say, that guy at 6 o'clock at night and he just loves to hear himself talk or whatever, and he just talks and stupid jokes and whatever they want to say, especially the stupid jokes. That can be really nauseating when somebody's supposed to be a sincere, serious Dharma teacher or whatever. I have no idea what they're saying to you. Some of it might be structurally and intellectually and conceptually might be valid from a relative point of view. I can't teach or talk from a Dharmakaya and make it appear that way. So I would say just meet them where they're at. You could even commiserate a little bit. You could even say, not that you need to say what I think you should say, but you could say, yeah, I can see a lot of people don't care for him or don't like what he does or whatever. If you could kind of, pacify the situation a little bit rather than use your emotional reaction. That doesn't mean you should get rid of the emotional reaction. Remember that, feel that an emotional reaction, because the very nature of compassion is not separate from anger. It's energy, it's incredible energy, incredible. If you really understand that energy, you could probably lift right off the ground. It's powerful, it's overwhelming, and it's yours. It's your birthright, every human being, according to the Buddha. Anyone else? There's 48 people out there. Anyone else have a question? Just speak up rather than raise your hands, because I can't see everyone.
Melissa bowing.
Yes, Melissa.
I'm thinking of the Sangha of my immediate family.
Yes.
How do we, if trust has been broken within our family, how do we communicate without trying to resolve the situation? Bowing.
That's a good one. And so there's nothing wrong with resolution, but the resolution needs to come out of a really powerful, intense awareness of what is moving. Because what happens, the ego mind, the self-centered mind that only wants to control and stop and protect and solve and whatever, it's materialism. It's spiritual materialism, as my teacher, the Dorje Draglam Mukpo, pointed out in Cutting Through Spiritual Materialism. It's using spiritual techniques to get stuff, make things happen, get results. And so I would say just continue to receive. And notice the kind of grabbiness of trying to find something that will solve it, something that will solve it. It's an open dimension. It's a fundamentally open dimension. And if you begin to understand what that is, you're beginning to understand the nature of wisdom. Wisdom has no position. But wisdom can take any position, and it can have fangs. This is what the whole teaching in the Tibetan pantheon of protectors and so on, with fangs and teeth. It means that anger has been transformed into wisdom. Don't believe any of that. Just consider it. Consider it. In other words, allow it to go back and forth. You don't need to come to a decision about anything. You do not have to resolve anything. Nothing ever is resolved. The whole nature of resolution or resolving is incomplete. That doesn't mean that someone like I don't have any Senchu's not here and Ondo's not here. So people who work as therapists, or Kelly, do you mind me mentioning your name? Kelly Klimey's a therapist. It doesn't mean that you might not have to work in that way with a particular person. I'm not trying to make everybody meditate. And say, don't do that at all. If they ask about your thing, you say, yeah, I meditate. Well, should I meditate? And you might say, well, I don't know, should you? Well, what is meditation? So actually, instead of any resolution, actually be on receive as much as possible, rather than trying to figure out how you can trap the person into becoming a meditator. Sometimes happens. So, but meet people where they're at, and that may mean the only thing that's going to work for them might be medication of some kind. Not meditation, but it might be some kind of chemical situation. And it is and maybe that isn't right from some kind of profound view of nature of reality or something, that everyone should come through the Dharma gate. No, meet people where they're at. People they've been doing this for millions of years, and here we are again. Darn it. But we can do this. If you're here, you're interested. You wouldn't be here if you weren't interested. Maybe you won't do it, but we weren't interested in doing this with your mind and not doing it out of the authority of somebody or believing in someone. This is not about belief. This is belief. This is disbelief. And this is ignoring. You don't have to do any of those, but it just takes a while to really notice the way we continue to do this so that it starts to drop away, because you can't push it away, because then you're buying right back into relative truth again, trying to control stuff. And of course, this is what my student here, Kozan, is dealing with. So you just witnessed an interface between the energy that's coming from a tiger and the energy that's coming from a Garuda. And you can't figure it out. You can't figure it out. There's no resolution to this. There doesn't need to be a resolution. But you could actually look at the way it's not resolved. That's awareness. Look at the way it's not resolved, because nothing lasts. If you do anything with anything, it solidifies into, you become fixated on it, and then it becomes a thing. You're always jealous, or you're always this way. But if you just look at the nature of it and not revert back into the person who's viewing it, ego, then you begin to see the actual structure of dependent origination, pratitya samutpada. You begin to actually personally witness hell. You personally witness it. You're no longer afraid of anything. Personally witness the intense grief that people have in their hearts. And they covered up, they don't want that grief. They're not willing to look at this heart of sadness. They want something else. They won't look at that, so they cover it up with their opinions or their judgments or blaming others for how they feel or don't feel. 90-10, listen 90% of the time, talk 10%. I'll get to you, Katie. Go ahead.
If we're seeing a miscommunication, or what we might even call the teacher misrepresenting us, and it's giving us trouble as a student, could we practice losing to the teacher?
You could. You could also just talk. I'm not sure where you're going with that, but you could talk to the teacher about it and say what you do. Your communication is always straightforward, and sometimes it's painful to hear what you're going through without trying to help you solve it. But this is a spiritual path. This is not about solving the issues that are tagging along behind us as relative truth that is looking for results. How you were treated by your family, or in this lifetime or another lifetime, might be showing up for some kind of, because your mind is starting to open up, you could say, and you're able to receive more and more of what is coming at you by the mind training, looking at the wall. So a lot of things are going to be showing up. I would say just receive as much as you can. If you're just on receive, then if the time comes where you really have to do something, you won't even think about it. It won't be an either or. You just do that. And if someone were to say to you, "Why did you do that?" you might not be able to say why. More. Seito.
Seito bowing. When we're in a situation where we see an interaction with a teacher and a particular student, and we're also a student of that teacher, how do we receive the teaching of the situation when the direct teaching isn't necessarily meant for us?
I think it would be different with each person. Some people, and I have no doubt that some people are going to you could say, side with the teacher. And some people are going to side with the student, or side with Kozan, or something. Or some people are going to be like, who knows what this is about? I don't even see why this is even happening. So all of those things are available, and they will show up. And if you don't live here, and if you've not been a part of this community for 10, 12 years, it's probably will be more difficult to understand the logistics of it, not have been here. So just observe it. You don't need to come to any conclusion about anything. I'm just incredibly happy that you're able to come back here as a student. Just study, just observe, just attend, just return. It says return to the Buddha, return to the teacher, return to the teaching. Everything's dependently risen. Return to the Sangha, This is your community. Difficult as it may be, at least you have, at least you have people whose intention, as far as we can tell, is to train their mind to see the truth and to save all beings. That's the intention. Sometimes that gets thwarted by people's fear. The people that are really terrified don't know it. The people that know that they're terrified, they know it, and that's what's bringing them back to the wall. Other people who don't know that, they've covered it up with their ideas, their opinions, their judgments, their evaluations, and that's a little nest they built, and they're not gonna leave that unless they have to. And so the function of the teacher, as far as I'm concerned, and I learned from both of my teachers. I had other teachers, but two that are the most important are Trungpa Rinpoche and Kobun Roshi. Very, very direct teachers that hit me right where I was hiding up. It just took years and years of mind training to be able to stop fighting that and see what was being pointed at. Painful, embarrassing. It was very embarrassing for me to meet Kobun 30 years ago and actually refuse the teacher that was right in front of me. Painful, but not painful at the time because I was all full of myself, thinking I just had a Vajra master, I don't need another teacher. Embarrassing. And then I'm not going to go through that again, but describing it, but it was embarrassing. Katie.
So when we're feeling anger or aggression, and we see that we're feeling anger and aggression, but we don't want to feel anger or aggression, how do we sit with that?
Well, if you're doing, Katie wants to know if you're feeling anger and aggression, you don't want to feel the anger and aggression, how do you deal with that? Just take everything you said there, and and just include all of that. Just be aware of that. And also, I can't give you deliberate instructions necessarily like, who is it that feels that way? But at some point that may show up kind of spontaneously in your sitting practice. You have to sit a lot. This doesn't mean you have to maintain it. This is something that I was taught differently. I don't teach that way. I say, intend, get to the cushion, strike the gong. I'm going to stay here for an hour, 20 minutes, 30 minutes, 4 hours, and then an hour later, strike the gong again. What happens in that time? If you can, maintain this, but don't maintain it aggressively. Actually get up and go to the bathroom, get some water, but come back and return until the final gong. So it's about the awareness of movement, not just in the mind, but the body also. Body and mind are not two different things. Sure the hell looks like it, but it's not. But
Katie bowing. So what if the anger and aggression is coming up not when we're on the cushion, but when we're in an interaction out in the world, and it's affecting how we're interacting, how we work with that?
Yeah, just the 90-10 is good. Shut up. Put it bluntly. Shut up. Don't respond. Also, when you're looking at someone's eyes, look at them in the eyes when you're speaking, but when you're receiving, drop your gaze slightly. This is your body. Just drop your gaze so that they're able to really because you're modifying somebody's speech to you by staring at them. They might think that it's receiving. They might tell you to look at me or something. But if they do, then go ahead and look at them. But you could drop your gaze, not all the way down, not like some kind of humility, but just slightly, just drop it. Follow me?
Yuhong bowing.
Yuhong
bowing. As a student, how can we know we are ready and understand you push us off the cliff? Bowing.
Well, we got to get to the cliff first, Yuhong. And when it comes, I'll let you know. You can't, it isn't something you can know about. And I say this to people over and over again. I'm not trying to say go away so much as I'm saying, come this way. I want you to, if you have a connection here, only you're going to know. I mean, anybody that comes this way, I'm connected with intensely. But only you're going to know if you have that connection. Or if it's time, I may have a connection that may be there now, but I might not hear from you for 10 years. That might be a long time from now. But I mean, they never show up, but it's your connection. If you're here, you and I have had an interview, and you're in touch with Unyo, you're in touch with the Sangha, you join other book discussions and so on. So you're endeavoring to look at this connection, and we just started less than a year ago. So I would just say, just keep going. It's not a matter of when do we know. It's then you have all the other things to consider, like your family, your children. Everyone is different. Maybe you want to come this way, maybe you don't. Any of you who have come this way and then backed off, you'll notice I don't pursue you. I trust you to do what you need to do. If you need this, what's happening here, which, and people show this in different ways. Sokuzan, as much trouble as I give her, is still here, giving me trouble. She might not know it.
A question from Lyd. Do you have a list of reading materials we should study if we cannot study with the Sangha?
Yes, there's a list of 50 books that you can get by writing to the monastery, and someone will pick that up and see that you get that list. Yes.
There's also a shorter abbreviated list on the website.
Okay, and that's what, 10 or 12? There's 10 or 12 books there that I recommend. Some of them are the books we're actually studying right now. And so, yeah, but it's good to study with Sangha, Buddha, Dharma, Sangha, teaching, which is a Dharma, but studying with Sangha is, the reason I stress that is because I missed that with studying with the Shambhala Sangha or the Vajradhatu Sangha 30, 40 years ago. It was not organized in a way that was fundamentally helpful to people. So that, looking at that, it wasn't that it wasn't okay, but this is it's better the way we do it. We cover the actual text that this Buddha Dharma is based on. The early text, the Majjhima Nikaya, Digha Nikaya. We're studying on Majjhima Nikaya on Saturday. Early texts, supposedly, of the Buddha. And then also Dogen Zenji is the founder of this lineage. That would be just go study that text. And if you could show up on a Tuesday at noon, Wednesdays, Eastern Standard Time. We've been talking about that for years. Maybe we'll never stop talking about Dogen or what it says.
A question from Shane in Virginia. How do I/we continue to trust the teacher when that feels disharmonious? Is that true harmony?
No. And yes. Maybe. Those responses are for you, Shane. Everybody else can disregard what I said. What I would say to you, Shane, you might not think that I know much, but I can tell who's practicing and who's not, and you need to practice more. Sit down, hold still, train your mind. I've talked to you at times when your practice has been very strong. It is not strong now. And I'm not saying not strong, just sitting practice, but everything. The connection that you and I have is kind of wavered, kind of goes back and forth. Train your mind. Don't just come on here and ask me questions. I mean, you should do that also, because then I can say things like I'm saying right now. Train your mind.
Question from Semi in Portland.
Semi.
What happened to your hand?
I bit myself. I was watching a baboon movie, and they were biting themselves, and I thought, I could try that. No, actually, I don't know what occurred, but I have my watch strapped on here, so you're not gonna miss any appointments. Got it tied on. So it's some kind of I have a Duke-Quervain, is that it? Duke-Quervain syndrome or something about the cables that come down here and connect to the thumb, and so you can pick up things like your toothpick, which I cannot do with this hand. It was too painful. So that's happening to compensate for the rotator cuff. And now I'm getting Duquervains in this wrist. So at some point, you guys are going to have to take turns wiping my butt. Was that a distasteful thing to say? Of course, I don't mean that, but I'm saying that's how it feels. Feeling kind of helpless, not being able to move around and having to have Unyo dress me, being helpless. It helps you to appreciate the relationship that is set up between the body and the mind and your identity. Not so comfortable. Further questions? Maybe we should just stop. I'll take one more if there is one. So we can end, but I want to thank you for attending and for considering this. I know this was kind of hot and heated, and a lot of it is not easy to understand because of the relationship that Sokuzan and I have has been very difficult the last couple of years. And it's not, no cause. She's not causing it. I'm not causing it. It is dependent origination. And that's not a way of shifting the cow's load to the ox, blaming someone. All dharmas are without blame, but you are responsible for everything. There isn't anything that isn't yours. It's called dependent origination. There's no self anywhere. There's no self anywhere. Find out. Liberate yourself from this crazy web so that you will no longer meddle with anyone and you won't be able to help but support everyone to see their true nature. It's possible. And you might run into a lot of objection and a lot of difficulty and a lot of struggle over it. But just as far as I'm concerned, with this vow, the vow to be with all things, it's powerful and it will take over. It will actually take over as you clarify your true nature and see that there's no solid person anywhere. Never has been, never will be.
May the merit of this penetrate into all places, so that we and every sentient being there can realize the Buddha's way. Jiro sanchi shifu, shisongu samoko sa, moko jaoromi. The 10 directions, the 3 worlds, all the Vedas, all venerable ones, Bodhisattvas, Mahasattvas, the great Prajna, Paramita. The Buddhas and Bodhisattvas of the 10 directions and the 3 times Chris heroes. This come down out of the light and text of the Koki Buddhist Temple Monastery, our Sangha, families, friends, and visitors. Everyone who is unhappy, sick, or suffering.